in the studio M Caldwell, Victorian Australian of the Year, a bullying survivor with an horrendous story of growing up, but also a very inspiring tale of turning it all around. And he joins me in the studio now. Good morning, John.
Good morning, Sally. Thanks for having me in.
Well, it's lovely to have you in here. And we're here to talk about some projects that you've got going. But for the audience, that people that don't know your story, it's a horrific tale. Tell us what we need to know that we can understand why you're in the position you are today, where you've become such a leading advocate against bullying.
Sure. Well, growing up, my family were extremely poor. Not unusual. Lots of people are poor. But my parents were violent alcoholics, so we were the children that would hide under the bed and watch all of this going on. At the age of 11, I was present when my father took his own life. So it was a really horrendous upbringing. However, the challenges that I faced that hurt even more than all of that were actually at school. And it was the relentless schoolyard bullying from the moment you walked in the gate to the moment you left. And it literally didn't end. And so that's probably what's led me now to focusing my energies on working with young people in schools who are going through that, who don't think there's a way out.
How old were you when the bullying started, and how long did it go on for?
I can't remember a time when there wasn't bullying. So it really went on from when I started school until I left. And leaving school was heartbreaking. I had ambitions to become a lawyer. And I remember the day I thought, well, I'm never going to be anything because I have to leave school. I can't go back. I can't face another day of this.
You left at 15. You didn't finish high school.
Correct. It was actually, I was 15 and it was the first day of the new year back at school. And I, for the first time ever, wagged school. I thought, I just can't go back to school this year. And it was the end of that day I decided to leave it all. I left home. I left school. Was homeless. Had nowhere to go. And that was how bad it got. I would rather be on the streets and not having a home, not having schooling, to just get away from it.
Tell us about what the bullying consisted of, and both, I suppose, your experience of it, but also, they're like everything, there's a spectrum, isn't there, of bullying. There's subtle, really violent.
Definitely.
But it all, is bullying. But tell us about that, about what kinds of things kids experience in school.
They experience it all, and I think for me, and often people don't realise, the most painful for me, I mean, I certainly was hit a couple of times, had things thrown at me. That actually wasn't the worst part. It was the subliminal stuff. It was the every time you walk past someone in the hallway calling you, my nickname was Busho, because I was clearly the poorest kid in school, so they called me Jono the Busho. So it was, Bushos here, or faggot was very common. And that was from an age when I didn't even know what gay was. I didn't know that I was gay. So as you're getting a bit older and you're struggling with your sexuality and you're getting teased for it, which is not just around sexuality, kids struggling with their poverty line at home, or whatever their issue is that they're already subconscious about, and then this other group of kids cling on to that and start hitting them for it. That's very painful. Just
being a happy teenager can be an ordeal, can't it?
Definitely. Being happy, being smart. One of the founders of Angels Gold that I work with, Chloe, was the state champion swimmer for Tasmania. Now that's to be celebrated. She was picked on for that, to the point where she ended up having conversion disorder, where it manifested into symptoms. She couldn't walk, she had liver failure, all from being bullied.
So what happened in your mind when you left school that enabled you to get it together and to make a great success out of your life? I know that you went to work for a franchise, and you won, was it franchise of one of these awards it was a global fast food company, and you won, was it franchise of the year?
I won franchise store of the year for Australia, and then I was in the top 3 for franchise of the world.
Because you see these, plaques up on, these kind of places, supermarkets and so on. I usually don't really think that much of it, but in your case it meant a huge amount.
Definitely. I think it gives you the confidence and the strength to say, hang on a sec, I'm not worthless, I'm not nothing, I'm not what I spent 15 years getting told. And it although that plaque in the supermarket of manager of the year or whatever it is, it just gives you that stepping stone to go, oh, what's next then? What else can I achieve? And that small award really did propel me to keep going for more and more, right until this award of Australian of the Year for Victoria.
So tell us about your book. You've got a book coming out?
It's out already. It's called Full Throttle. The book was a bit of a project that wasn't really necessarily to be published. It was a bit of a. I got asked by a lot of small businesses how, in this day and age, my business keeps going from strength to strength. What do we do differently? And then I was also asked by a number of people, like we're talking about today, how did I go from 15 years old, homeless, thinking of committing suicide, as up to 48% of young people are today, we hear, to starting my own company and getting on with it. So I started writing the book, and what it became was therapy for me. It actually opened some dark holes that I'd closed and forgotten about, and it was such a good cleansing process. And then the book came out for no apparent reason. It wasn't to sell 1 million copies. I just thought, I'm just going to do it. What's come from that, though, is that it has been picked up more on the charity aspect, more on the inspirational aspect. I'm getting calls from organisations, from schools, from parents that have read it, and I just can't tell you how amazingly proud I am that that's the impact it's having.
What do you do as a parent if your kid comes home and says, I'm being bullied? And of course, this is a better situation than a child being bullied and like you and not being able to talk to parents about it. But what can you do about it?
I think that firstly, the most important thing is that you do speak up and tell someone. I think if you're a parent, unfortunately, there's still a huge spectrum of parents who say, oh, it's just what happens when you're a kid. It's not what happens when you're a kid. And I touched on it before. A recent survey says that 48% of young people today have contemplated suicide. That is just catastrophic. And then we know that 40% of all youth suicide victims are from bullying. So these are figures to just shock people, to say it's not just schoolyard tactics, and we need to listen and pay more attention. In terms of giving advice, every case is different, so I wouldn't say this is what you must do, but I think they need to listen. They need to document themselves what's happened and ask for some facts and some examples. And we're very lucky in Victoria because there are anti-bullying laws, the only place in the country that there are, and you can read up on that. That's called Brodie's Law. But the foundation I work with is called Angel's Goal, and that website is amazing. It's got lots of tips and hints and links to psychologists or reports you need to fill out. So there's a lot of tools there to help people navigate through this.
We'll also give the phone numbers in a moment for, the numbers you can ring if you've, been thinking about some of the things that we've been talking about, particularly concerning youth suicide, in a moment. When does the normal... I mean, kids can be mean. And, when does meanness or normal child wrestling in the playground turn into bullying?
Yeah, it's a very important question, actually, and we spend a lot of time talking about this with people because we don't want it to become a catch cry if somebody said something you don't like. Bullying is when it's premeditated and it's repetitive and you're targeting someone. So, it's not just having an opinion of someone you don't like. It's when you're constantly targeting them, or worse, getting other people involved in that. That's when it becomes bullying. So, we don't want kids to avoid conflict. They need to have a bit of conflict in their life to toughen up and grow into mature adults. But it's that repetitive nature and the nastiness that we want to stamp out.
And kids handle it differently, don't they? How did you internalise this as a little boy? What did you?
I hid from everybody. We lived in Queensland and we had a house on stumps, and I would hide under the house all the time. I had no confidence. I wouldn't speak, not even at home or in social circles. So it's taken a long time for me to create the persona that's here now, and go from someone who barely could speak a word in public to being confident enough to talk to people.
Is it a persona? I mean, do you feel like there's part of you in this role now that it is a persona, and that you still have to hide a part of you that is John Caldwell who lived that life?
I think there's certainly times where I will go, oh, can I be that? Can I say that? But definitely it's a persona, and it is sometimes a forced persona. And I spend a lot of time talking and saying that I'm not that kid anymore, and I've done really well, and I've got fancy cars and fancy houses, and look at me, wow. The reality is, and the Australian of the Year award was a really big eye-opener for me. As I got up to get that award, I realised I've been lying when I say that's all gone, because the first thing I thought as I held that award was, have they made a mistake? Is this really me? I can't be worthy of this. And I had to go and document all the things I'm doing, all the people I'm talking to, all the help, to convince myself I was worthy. So some 20-odd years after the bullying stopped, it's still in the back of my mind constantly.
John, it's lovely to meet you and to hear you talk so openly and inspiringly about what you've made of what was a terrible, terrible start in your early life to being such a great success. It's great to meet you. Thanks for coming in.
Thank you, Sally, and thanks for the support.
John Caldwell, who is, well, the Victorian Australian of the Year. And if you need help, if there's somebody you know that needs help, you can call Lifeline on 131114.